In the last video, I told you NFPA 1700 added a whole new chapter on search. That was true, and it was the headline. But it was not the interesting part. The interesting part is that Chapter 13 quietly changed the words you use. I went and read Chapter 13, all of it. Here is what is actually in there. And I'm going to give you section numbers as we go, because NFPA gives you free read-only access, and you should go check me. Start with the structural change, because everything else hangs off it. Chapter 13 deliberately avoids describing search as a named tactic performed in a set order. The standard says it that way on purpose, to avoid implying a sequence, because the fireground does not run in sequence. Instead, it organizes search along two axes: when you go relative to water on the fire, and where you go in from, a door or a window. That is it. Those two questions describe every search you have ever done, which means the tactic you know as VEIS or VEIS, vent, enter, search, vent, enter, isolate search, is described in Chapter 13 as a window-initiated search. And the standard makes a point that explains why the old name was a problem. Sometimes the window is already vented. Sometimes the door to that room is already closed. The name assumed a sequence that had already happened without you. I want to be careful here. The standard does not ban the words VES or VEIS. Your department can keep saying them. What it does is stop building the tactic around a fixed order of operations and start building it around what you actually find when you get there. Before the search methods, Chapter 13 frames the whole problem in a way worth stealing. There are exactly two ways the fire department changes whether a trapped occupant lives. You remove the occupant from the hazard, or you remove the hazard from the occupant. That is the entire menu. And immediately after that, a line I would put on the wall. Removing the hazard from the occupant does not reduce the urgency or the priority of a search. Putting the fire out is not a substitute for going to find them. If your department has ever let a good fast knock quietly become the reason nobody searched, that sentence is aimed at you. Then, the size up. And this is where the chapter gets specific in a way the highlights video never showed you. A 360 for life hazard should include 7 things. Number of stories from the A and the C side, because those disagree more often than people admit. Presence and type of basement. Fire and smoke location. Volume and extent from every side. Thermal imaging to find the fire and the most threatened spaces, and also the most protected ones. The ventilation profile and flow path, identifying inlets and outlets. Whether flow at an opening is unidirectional or bidirectional. And the presence of occupant escape systems. Sit on the basement one, because the standard breaks it down further than most training does. Basements get classified by access, no access, limited access, or full access, and separately by whether they are finished or unfinished. Finished gives you some protection to the structural floor components above, and it means livable space, which means occupants. Unfinished gives you no protection to those floor components. But, and the standard is careful here, unfinished does not eliminate the potential for occupants either. Then the size up moves inside, and the standard treats the interior look as the step that either confirms or kills the plan you made on the outside. 5 questions. Where is the fire? Can you get in position to put it out? Can you get in position to create or hold searchable space? Can you prioritize the most endangered compartments to search or isolate? And can you determine the best route back out with somebody? And one that surprised me. Even on a defensive fire, the standard puts search back on the incident commander's plate, in the exposures. Define the priority exposures, and search them when fire conditions and building integrity allow. Defensive does not mean nobody is searching anything. So how does the standard say to choose between going in a door and going in a window? 5 things. The location and extent of the fire, the construction and occupancy type, the time of day, any signs of life or positive reports of trapped occupants, and what else is happening on the fireground at that moment. And whether you continue past the room you entered, either way in, depends on the conditions you find, and whether you can isolate, not on which opening you used. That is a small sentence with a big implication. The entry point does not commit you to a plan. Primary search. The standard defines it as rapid but thorough, of the locations where viable occupants are believed to be. Note, the word viable is doing work again, same as the survivability language from the last video, and it lists where, common paths of travel, main entry and egress points, bedrooms, closets, bathrooms. And here's a detail worth carrying. Because primary search happens early, before conditions have been improved, the standard says searching firefighters should stay as low as functionally possible. Not because low is always right, because early is when the thermal insult is worst and the visibility is poorest. Secondary search. Slower, deeper, and typically after coordinated suppression and ventilation have improved visibility. And then a line that I think is the sharpest thing in the chapter. Consider having a different crew do the secondary search than did the primary to avoid bias. Think about why that is in a standard. The crew that searched a room already believes it is clear. They are not lying. They are primed. A fresh crew has no memory of having already looked. That is a human factors finding sitting in a fire standard, and it costs nothing to apply. Now the timing axis, which is where the real tactical content lives. 3 states: search before fire control, search during fire control, search after. The guidance is genuinely different in each one. Before water, isolation is the whole game. Isolate the space you enter. Isolate the fire compartment from its air. Close the bedroom door on a bedroom fire. Close the front door on a kitchen or living room fire. The standard is blunt, that these are things to consider, not commands. But the logic is consistent. Every door you close buys the occupant time. And the standard gives you 3 different versions of that, depending on how you got in. Window into a space that is not already isolated. Isolate it, then consider adding exterior ventilation to that space. Door initiated ahead of water. Isolate the room you are searching from any flow path connected to the fire compartment. And separately, isolate the fire compartment itself from its air supply. Close the bedroom door on a bedroom fire. Close the front door on a kitchen or living room fire. And if you cannot isolate, if you are going in a window ahead of suppression and there is no way to shut that space off, the standard says maximize the distance between where you enter and the fire compartment. In plain terms, if you have a choice, enter furthest from the fire. Search during fire control. This is the one that should change behavior, and it connects straight to the offensive versus defensive change we talked about last time. The standard says effective fire control, interior or exterior, enables search and rescue to happen at the same time. And then it goes further. If the first water goes on from the outside, that should not hold your search crew at the door. Water on the fire improves conditions throughout the building, even when it is applied from outside. Both the thermal and the toxic hazard come down. The search gets easier, not more dangerous. If that sounds like it contradicts how you were trained, that is exactly why it is in here. This is the UL Fire Safety Research Institute work. Full-scale residential experiments comparing an interior attack against water from the outside first, with a search team working the whole time. The reports are free at fsri.org. And unlike the standard, you can download those. After control, the guidance flips. Open it up. Open previously isolated spaces. Create ventilation openings. Establish flow paths to the outside so the combustion products actually leave. All the isolation discipline from before the water is over once the fire's out. Then the second half of the chapter, which is rescue, the removal itself. 3 ways the standard says to minimize what the occupant absorbs on the way out. Isolate them from the fire environment during the removal. Pick an egress path remote from the fire compartment. And move in the intake side of the flow path, with the occupant's head at the lowest functional elevation. And whether you take them out a door or a window is its own decision, not a default. The standard says weigh where the occupant is relative to the fire, where suppression is in its timeline, and what the conditions actually are. Then pick the one that exposes them least on the way out. That third one is worth sitting with. Head low on the intake side. You already know to stay low yourself. The standard is asking you to think about the height of the person you are dragging, because they have been breathing this the whole time and you have not. One more, and it is the least comfortable line in the chapter. On independent search and fire attack operations, running them separately, the standard says they should not be executed when resources and staffing will not support it. That is not a suggestion about ideal staffing. That is a limit on what a short crew should attempt. If you run a volunteer department or you ride a short engine, that sentence is about you. And I am not going to pretend it resolves anything. It does not. But it is now written down. And written down is what gets cited afterward, in both directions. Locked in. Chapter 13, stopped describing search as a named tactic in a set order, and started describing it by timing relative to water and by entry point. VES and VEIS are window-initiated search. Before water, isolate, or enter furthest from the fire. During fire control, water from outside helps your search. It does not block it. After, open it up. On removal, mind the occupant's head height on the intake side, and consider a different crew for the secondary. This is part 1 of 4 on what actually changed in 1700. Next, Chapter 9, and the sentence that redefined what offensive means. Go read Chapter 13 yourself. Free access, section numbers are in the description. Subscribe and the next part finds you. Bring the irons.